What's up, everybody? Whoops, this is a little sneak preview because I meant to go to this one. Happy New Year, gang. Welcome to episode 2? Episode 1? It's nebulous, you know. I guess we're episode 2 at this point. This is Lads on Tour. We're the lads. This is the tour. You're along with us. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year to all the lads. Gang, we're going to get right into it. We have seen recently possibly one of my most favorite films of all time. We're talking about Fargo today. Fargo, for those of you that aren't in the know, a great film. First of all, let's get this out of the way. Did everybody watch Fargo? Did everybody do their homework? Lucy, I know you did because you were sitting over there on that couch with me. We watched it together.
I was right there with you.
Tam, this is your pile of shame. So I hope that you got a chance to watch Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I did, yeah. Or as they say in Minnesota, yeah.
You betcha.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I want
there.
to see. I want to
Yeah.
see if chat has seen Fargo. I want
Yeah.
I don't know, a show of hands.
Yeah.
Give us something. Let's know if you've seen.
Put an F in the chat. F for Fargo, of course.
Yeah, F for Fargo.
Fargo in the chat. Yeah,
in the chat if you've seen it.
If you've seen it, and also let us know if you've seen it previously or if this is your first time.
A lot of F's in the chat right now.
That's right. Yeah, two of us running the Lads on Tour crew put in an F in the chat. So, well done, Jacob McCourt. Oh, first time chatters coming in. Lil Blaster 47. Travis has seen it. Cruiser has seen it. Right on. First time for serious
First time
business.
Maria.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have to say an A if this is the first time you've seen Fargo.
Yeah. And then we'll have to come up with something for R and G and O.
Put an
You
R
really
in the chat.
liked it.
Yeah, put an R in the chat if you really love Fargo.
Put an O in the chat if you've ever been to Fargo.
If you've over been to Fargo.
I did not know Fargo was a real place.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
me neither.
Fargo, Minnesota, my dude.
I mean, you wouldn't know based on the movie because most of it doesn't even take place in Fargo.
That's true.
Yeah, what is it, Brainerd?
Yeah,
Brainerd in
which sounds like a way to die. Like, he was Brainerd to death.
Yeah, it
You
sounds
know?
like an Egyptian.
Is that what it sounds like to you?
I've listened to a lot of true crime.
Getting Brainerd?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an Egyptian process, a stage during the mummification process, but then it also sounds like a weird millennial sex act.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does it not sound like fellatio to y'all? I mean,
no.
Getting Brainerd? Come on.
Maybe it's a combination of all three.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I'll tell you what hardly ever happens in Fargo, Brainerding. So
no.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, it happens once.
Way too Puritan up there for that kind of deviant act.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah.
That's my new favorite accent.
It's so good.
We're gonna have to we might have to put a moratorium on that accent throughout the course of the podcast.
Oh no.
I have a feeling that people are gonna go. You're right. It is Fargo, North Dakota. You're right. Oh no! Somebody broke the embargo. The Fargo embargo.
The embargo.
I like Digibop, who said, "I saw Ben Affleck's Argo."
I misunderstood the assignment. I watched Argo instead.
Oh no. Lil Blaster 47 just finished 10 minutes ago, so I mean that's a buzzer beater. You're not wrong.
Timing.
You finished it right in the nick of time.
Yeah.
Back at school.
What's that?
So we've got a bunch of people who
Yeah.
have seen it then.
That's
Good.
great.
Excellent.
That's good.
Excellent.
Off to a solid start.
As always, we love to see some chat involvement. So chuck your thoughts in as we're talking about it, and we'll do our best to keep it in the chat and read stuff off that's interesting. Only stuff that's interesting. If you're putting boring shit in there, we're not going to read it. Okay, get out of here. We will ban you.
Well, we don't have any mods, so.
Dudes a lot asks, isn't Andrea Renee from Fargo? And we're gonna have to find out.
Oh no!
We're gonna have to do that homework and find out.
Wait, I can
Preferably
text
before
her.
the end of the. Yeah, I was gonna say text her.
Let me
See
text
if she can answer before the end of the episode. We'll get down to the bottom of this.
I've met a few people from Fargo and North Dakota in that area, and all the ones who move out try very hard not to have that accent. At least that I've met, they hide it, and there are words that you can hear it through, like bag. They'll say bag instead of bag sometimes. But most people try to hide it. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's from there, but you wouldn't know.
In my research, I discovered that it actually became like a pretty big point of contention amongst people in North Dakota and Minnesota. Like people would come, tourists would be there to like hang out or whatever, and they'd be asking people to quote lines from the movie in the Fargo accent, which I'm sure would get really like even still to this day, you know. Like, and I get it. Like that could wear on a group of people. I'm from Lodi, and famously, there's a Creedence Clearwater revival song called "Stuck in Lodi," and I feel like less so now than when I was a kid. But when I would say like, "Oh, I'm from Lodi," people would "Stuck in Lodi," meh, you know. So one of those deals. But let's talk a little bit about Fargo facts. Okay, so released March 8th, 1996. Written by Joel and Ethan Coen, directed by Joel Coen, starring William H. Macy, Frances McDormand, Steve Buscemi, Peter Stormare. Had a budget of $7 million, but ended up making $60 million at the box office.
Damn.
it won. Frances McDormand won Best Actress at the Oscars, and Fargo also won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. But it swept the Independent Spirit Awards, winning Best Film, Best Director, Best Leads, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Editing and Best Screenplay. Like, hugely important film. Like, such a major important film for the 90s, such a major important film for the Coen brothers. I think this is the movie that really put them on the map. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But I was wondering if Lucy couldn't start us off with maybe a little bit of a plot synopsis. I know a lot of folks here in the chat have seen Fargo recently, previously, whatever. But if there's anybody that happened to wander into this show today and has not seen Fargo, Lucy, tell them what this film happens to be about.
Okay, so I also, just off the top, I have texted Andrea because we will find out.
Great.
We want to get to the bottom if she is from Fargo. I've also said, do you have any fun Fargo fact, movie or otherwise?
Okay, good. Thank you.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
She does have a very young baby, so you know. So
do you
Fargo,
think the baby knows about Fargo?
Yeah.
I
the baby.
Can we get some facts about the baby
from Charlotte? So Fargo, like, it's a weird one because I remember thinking the first time I ever watched Fargo, I was like, I had no idea what this movie is about. And at the center of it is just, there was a down on his luck car salesman. And I've got the Wikipedia up just for the names, because the names are like...
Jerry Lundegaard.
Jerry Lundegaard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. You know Jerry?
Sure.
Jerry.
Oh,
so
Jerry at the car lot?
He is down on his luck. He needs money badly. And so the way he thinks that he's going to get money easily is to hire some good-for-nothings to kidnap his wife and then use her rich father, who's also his boss, to pay the ransom. And as you can tell, with a well-thought-out plan like that, it all just goes to shit very, very quickly. And so the two guys that he gets involved, Peter Stormare and Steve Buscemi, play... They both have names like Carl and Gear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kidnap his wife, but it all goes wrong. Like
No.
On the way to transporting her, there's a state trooper who comes up and they try and smooth talk their way past it. They end up killing him and two other passers-by, which basically just brings more attention to this shitty little scheme that Jerry started. And then that's where Margie comes in. Sweet Margie, pregnant sheriff. She gets involved and tries to get to the bottom of, these murders, these killings. And Jerry, at the same time, is trying to balance the demands of his overbearing rich father-in-law, who clearly hates him. Like, he also tries to pull off a scheme where, like, a real estate scheme, thinking that he will get all of the money, but his father-in-law and his accountant, what's the accountant's name? Scott? I'm trying to find it. But anyway, and the accountant are like, no, we'll give you a finder's fee. We're not going to give you like $750,000. So just everything is kind of escalating for Jerry. Margie gets involved and just to try and solve it. Like, I don't know how far you want me to go through this, but it's like, there's also these little fun side bits where they try and make it's not a side bit, it's like the main plot point where, like, they try and make the deal, but the father-in-law decides to go instead of Jerry, because Jerry's like desperately trying to hold on to control, and the father-in-law just steamrollers through it, ends up getting killed by Carl, but he also manages to kind of shoot him up the jawline. And then Carl and Gaia just fall out. They can't agree. But before their big falling out, Carl does pull a fast one and hides all of the money. He takes out like the cut that they were supposed to get, and he's like, oh yeah, I'll split it. But actually what he's done is he has a briefcase of like $1 million, and he hides it
hidden in
the
middle of
the
worst
place.
Like, who's
Yeah,
finding
so
that money
bad.
ever again?
On the side of a road, and the only marker is like a red shovel.
That would blow away the 5 mile per hour.
As soon as that
And
snow
also,
melt.
like, that area is now covered in blood. Like, it's so...
Yeah.
I was watching that, I was like, if you make it out of this film, you're never coming back for that. You're not getting that.
this is a kind of film that I like to classify as shit just keeps going wrong, right? Like that's a wordy sort of title for a genre, but it's like it's when
like
things go awry, right? Because like Jerry has this plan that he thinks is foolproof. Like he's gonna pay these guys to kidnap his wife. His rich dad is gonna cave, or father-in-law is gonna cave and give the money, and then his financial woes will be taken care of, and it's not a big deal, and it just becomes as Serious Business here says in the chat, a complete clusterfuck. Like everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong, and it's just people making bad decisions over and over again, which is kind of like a theme in Coen Brothers films. It's just like
I was gonna say it's very Coen Brothers.
Ordinary people making the wrong choice that just sort of snowballs into this. Yeah, exactly. Great Lake says a Coen Brothers movie, and that's exactly what it is, you know. And I think that we think of Coen Brothers movies in this way because of this film. Like this is the first one I feel like that kind of. This is the film that sort of put them on the map. I mean, they were 6 movies in to their career at this point, but this is the one where I feel like they became a bigger part of the conversation. You know?
It's one of those movies where it's the perfect encapsulation of that phrase, which is like, once you start lying, you're basically digging your grave, and every moment you're forced to like cover a lie with another lie, and it spirals and escalates, and that's exactly what this is. And it's like also, you know, the best laid plans of mice and men, you know, and that is essentially what this entire film is about from different perspectives. For like, it's that idea for a bunch of different characters, other than maybe Margie and Norm, who seem to be the only 2 people around who are central to the plot that aren't lying about something. And they are put into a situation, like she's put into a situation one where she could potentially have lied about something, but it turns out it's, you know, she's smart enough, she's pure enough to realize that that it's not a situation that she wants to go into. And in terms of like the main character, what's his face again? Jerry. It is both an insight into his personality, and also it is a look at this pathetic human. Like he is pathetic, and the film kind of in a lot of ways presents him as pathetic from a lot of different angles, and then it kind of reinforces the fact that it's kind of sad, because it's like, this is what this man is, and he will never be anything better. And sometimes, for me, it was just like, sometimes you just got to accept your lot in life. And that's what Norm did. Like the exact opposite of Jerry is Norm. And Norm, I assume, is, I read up about it actually, and they talked about how the Coen brothers told Frances McDormand and the lad who plays Norm to come up with backstories for their characters,
right,
so that they could give them. And Norm he used to be on the police force, and then when they got married, they decided together who was the better cop, and that person stayed on the police force, and it was Margie. And he was like, all right, I'm gonna piss off and go paint now. And like, he is
great side story.
He is the epitome of knowing your lane and staying within it, whereas Jerry was on the opposite side, where you open with him scheming to get himself out of a situation, and at a certain point, like, I think the father-in-law is basically like, the idea of him getting his own deal is something that comes up, and the father-in-law is just like against it, because he's like, you're gonna fuck this up. And the film basically shows you, yes, Jerry is going to fuck it up, and he sucks at this. And maybe it's good that his father-in-law treats him like he's an idiot, because he is in fact an idiot. And this movie proves it. And it's like, it is just one of those situations where it's sad, but it's kind of like, some people are just not built for it, you know, like some people aren't built for greatness, and sometimes it's good to just recognize that. Otherwise things spiral out of control and you start doing stupid shit, and before you know it, you're in jail and your family is like dead or whatever.
I love Maria's comment here. Jerry is like a talentless Walter White.
Like,
he's a Walter White who hasn't found his calling. Maybe his calling is not in real estate or schemes. Maybe he would be good at cooking meth. You know?
That's the thing. Like, I feel like Jerry is one of those people who's bad at everything. Like, despite and like, he's bad at everything, and also he's stupid as
But
well.
also, it feels like the one good thing in his life is the fact that he married that woman, and like he married into a good family, and he's basically, I mean, I didn't really talk about like the full end of the movie, but he has fully fucked that one up. Like,
Right.
it
She's
goes
dead.
so badly
The
wrong.
dad's
Yeah.
dead.
Is she
He ends
dead?
up getting arrested. Yeah, she's dead. Yeah. I think that it's I don't think that they outright say that she's dead, but it's implied
because
that
she says like, "Oh, that on the floor."
right. But
that
it's implied that
Yeah.
that Gare loses his cool when she starts screaming and essentially just beats her to death. But
Oh wait, no, Lil Blaster raises a great point. All those golfing trophies.
he does have a lot of golfing trophies. That's true.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're not like participation prizes though.
That
Probably.
very well could be. Yeah.
That seems like a Jerry energy.
So I want to talk a little bit more about our kind of experiences with Fargo and stuff like that. But before we do that, I want to talk about some of the stuff that some folks have brought it up here. Did anyone else think that this was actually a true? Sir Dudes a lot said, did anyone else think this is actually a true story on first watching? I certainly did. Like, I thought this was a true story for a very long time. But Jake, you were talking a little bit about this when we were prepping about how they have a disclaimer up front that says that this is a true story. But then you also see later at the end of the movie that standard disclaimer that says like all of these are fictitious works and any resemblance is, you know, purely a happenstance. But like, can you tell us a little bit about the actual truthfulness of Fargo?
Yeah, so I guess like from a personal standpoint, I had seen Fargo after I had seen There Will Be Blood, not There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men, and Big Lebowski. So I kind of knew Coen brothers are kind of like, they like to mess with the audience a little. So when I saw Fargo, I kind of figured that they were just being themselves and putting that there just to mess with audience. But yeah, so the film starts with that disclaimer, and it's shot in a way that makes it feel like it could be real. And those like wider lenses, it a lot of simple characters. There's nothing too grandiose about what happens throughout the story. But like you're saying, when you get to the end, it does say that based on fictional characters. However, in interviews and stuff, the Coen brothers have kind of been like, yeah, some of these characters are based on real characters, but other times they've said they're not. So there's kind of a mixed message there. And then apparently, I don't know how true this is, or if like, I don't know, someone like made a huge leap here, but apparently someone died searching for that money too. So in real life, which is kind of interesting.
There's a film, a Japanese film from a few years back called Kumiko the Treasure Hunter that is about a woman who gets obsessed with the movie Fargo, and she thinks that it's like a real, like it is a true story, and she knows that money is there somewhere, and she goes looking for it. Ultimately, the movie about how this woman is like mentally unwell, but I
do a video about this.
We did. I was literally just getting it. I was just getting it up. Kurt made an episode of True Fictional about this one, which is actually how I watched Fargo for the first time. Like, because we were talking about it all the time at work, and so Zach, I remember coming to you and being like, "Can we watch Fargo?"
To which I probably did like a happy little dance because this is a movie that I watch probably once a year. I mean, so yeah.
Yeah, I've dropped it in chat if folks want to check it out later. But yeah, it's the poor woman just like got suckered in, and God, I mean it's weird because I kind of had the is it true, is it not thing, not necessarily spoiled, but because I was overhearing conversations at work and stuff, I kind of went in with more of this suspension of I still had like the suspension of disbelief, but I was like, I know this isn't true. Also, for some reason I watched the Fargo TV series before I watched the film, so I've seen like definitely the first two, most if not all of season 3. It was a while ago, so I kind of knew what the vibe was.
During that whole time, you didn't decide to watch the movie that it was based on?
No.
I mean, why bother?
Look,
you know?
lot going on at that time.
That's fair. I really like that they do that. They have that little message there because no movie, like I feel like every movie is like based on a true story, but it never really is. You know, like they'll take some characters, they'll take some set pieces, they'll write all of the dialogue from scratch. Maybe there's one line that they heard in an interview that they're like, oh, that's good. But like I don't know. My stance is that like everything you create kind of comes from some sort of truth, you know, if
Yeah.
you're honest with yourself.
Mhm.
And like they're from Minnesota, right?
Right.
I think they're from the
Yeah,
area.
they are.
Those are probably like, even though they're not based on specific characters, I'm sure those characters are amalgamations of other people they've met, they've talked to, and like I don't know, like for me, I thought that was super clever, just because so many films love to say they're based on a true story, even documentaries, right? You see documentaries and they're supposed to be true, but documentaries aren't true because there's perspective, there's the director's influence on it. People are different when they're in front of the camera, when they're not. So like it just kind of touches on this idea that like I mean, is it true? Maybe. Is it not true? Maybe. Does it matter? No, it really does not matter.
Yeah, the idea of like pulling from what you know is something that definitely happened in that film, because the Coen brothers are obviously from there. There's the scene between William H. Macy's character and Jerry and the lads, the couple buying the car, the first one.
Oh
where they
yeah, you
basically-
want that true coat?
The true coat,
the
yeah.
true coat scene is basically William H. Macy describes it as a transcript of his interaction with a car salesman. So it's basically, he was like, that is word for word what happened to me, and that's what they just put in the movie. So I think it's also believable because it's kind of a film about nothing in the middle of nowhere, if you get what I mean. I think the most impressive thing about this
It's like
film
the Seinfeld
is,
of films. It's a film about nothing.
yeah, I mean, like it's clearly about something, like, you know, someone is killed and there's a scheme that's gone wrong, but like in this day and age, that doesn't seem like out of the ordinary. Maybe back in the day, 1996, that would be like wild, like stakes at play. But this year, you could read a news headline that begins with "Florida man," and you're like, yeah, we know where this is going. But like the thing about it is, the impressive about it is what makes it believable is like the place is kind of nowhere, middle of nowhere. The people are utterly boring, top to bottom, and like, I feel like this film is typified by that man who tells them, who works at the bar, I think, and talks about someone talking about being at the lake. Like,
Right.
the cop comes out and asks him a question, and in one breath, this man just recites his entire life story, and it's like a paragraph long, and it's the most boring, inane shit ever. And you're like, that's these people. Like, that is, and that's how they kind of make that work. That kind of big story in a small environment, and like the stakes aren't that high, but it still feels tense, if you get what I mean, because it's a bunch of boring people and it's just slowly escalating, and at every turn you're like, no, this is not what you should be doing, and you're doing this because you're a dum-dum. And it's kind of, at certain points, like, you start looking down on the people in the, I felt like that way, and I caught myself being like, are Minnesotans all idiots, or what's going on here? And then you're like, no, this is obviously like, you know, they've kind of fictionalized it and messed with it. And it's just like, but they do so good at small town kind of capturing the vibe of it that you're like, wow,
Yeah.
this feels bigger.
I think the setting helps a lot too, just because, I mean, have you ever seen a movie that takes place in North Dakota or Minnesota? Like,
I'll tell you what it reminded me of, and this is such a weird pull, but it reminded me of John Carpenter's The Thing. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
It just reminded me of The Thing the entire time
Because
it's
it's
such
so
a snowy, but like that's how you create this kind of like feeling of getting kind of like a feeling of grandeur within a small space. Especially in a film, because like The Thing takes place in like one or two locations, but because when they show you the outside, it's just like snow as far as the eye can see. You feel like it's a massive space and you're super isolated. And they do the same thing here, where it's like when they're showing outside, they're showing a lot. When they're showing inside, they're showing only a little. So they create this disparity where you forget that there's a middle ground and it can just be normal. You think that either it's massive and you're terrified at how big it is, and it feels frigid, or it's small and you're like worried about how like claustrophobic is and how it could pop off at any moment, especially when you've got like two low-key psychos involved.
There's a great shot too, kind of to that point. it's an establishing shot where they're in the car, and rather than like dividing the frame into thirds, I'm sorry, I went to film school and I gushed a little bit about this. But they set the horizon down so low that you mostly just see the sky, and you see like a sliver of the ground, and then you see the car travel across. And that shot, I love that shot just because it is just like
it's right here.
It breaks a lot of conventions for a shot like that, but it also it like really hammers home that feeling of isolation, I guess. And then similarly, there's another shot when I think after Jerry like asks if he can own and operate that parking lot, he walks out and you get this shot from the building down onto the parking lot, and there's only one car, and it's his car. And I love that shot just because it just immediately sets the stage. It's just like, oh yeah, they are in the middle of nowhere here.
And the other film that it reminded me of is obviously The Shining. Like it feels like a lot of the kind of like really zoomed out, like the opening shot of The Shining is just the car traveling all the way out. And then whenever you see the Overlook Hotel or outside of it, it's just snow everywhere.
I think it's so interesting that you compared it to 2 horror films. Like, I think that's pretty wild.
It definitely goes for that, like the same stylistic techniques as those kind of horror films.
You know who did the cinematography?
Yeah, it's Roger Deakins
from Blade Runner
and from Batman and from he's probably the most famous. Yeah, he's probably the most famous cinematographer. Certainly working today, but I think that kid called Jack in the chat actually hit the nail on the head here. It's funny, with this film you think less of the crime and more about the characters. Like, the crime is probably the most boring thing ever about a car park, you know, like it is a really interesting movie because it is about ordinary people in a relatively ordinary circumstance. Like
they just get on with it,
right?
Which
I think I like the thing that I love most about, or one of the things that I love most about this, is how nonchalant Frances McDormand's character is, Margie, about everything. You know, she comes into the auto dealership there, and like, it's so obvious that Jerry is lying in that scene. Like, it's so clear that he's lying. And she's just
all of his lies are so bad.
He's just
okay. Like, you know,
no, they said just me. They don't want to talk to anyone else.
Yeah,
it's so.
Like, that's the thing where you think like, and again, it sounds bad. I don't mean it to be bad, but like my city slicker brain is just like, are these people all just too stupid to figure out like what's going on here? Like, everyone, like, Margie is the only one who like is suspicious of a lot of people, and I think that makes her character, like, they use that to raise her competence very quickly, and they do it right from the start. Like, the first time you see her, she looks at her deputy and does the I think that means dealer, dumbass.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She says I'm not so sure about your police work there. You know, like, it's such a it's so disarming. Like,
and then she tells that joke about the guy who changes his name to the plate because he couldn't afford a private plate, and like looks at him to see if he gets it, and the guy clearly, like, I don't know if to me it registered as like, she's checking my intelligence level, so I'm just gonna act like I get it. And she's like, that's that one. And you're like, okay, so Margie is like god queen of this little town because she's got 2 brain cells instead of 1. And like, that's how a lot, even like the most successful people, like their father-in-law, is an idiot at the same time, because he's like the small town guy who succeeded and now thinks he's the most powerful man in the world. So he's gonna roll up to an exchange with a psychopath, kidnap her, and think that he can like John Wayne his way out of it, and it ends up blowing up in his face, or ends up with a slug in his gut.
While we're talking about Margie, I mean, did any of you watch Mayor of Easttown this year?
It was on HBO. That show is phenomenal.
It was so good, but it was like, it's weird seeing the difference between Mayor and Margie when, you know, character-wise, like, they both live in small towns, both law enforcement, both know everyone. Obviously, like, living situation-wise, very, very different. Like, Mayor is divorced, Margie has this really happy relationship with Norm, but the way that they conduct themselves, like, they're both these strong women who are both incredibly clever, but the way that both of them are acted out is so different. Whereas Mare, it's like, it's weird, we were talking about this movie where everything can go wrong and things keep escalating. Mare, it gets really, really stressful. I found it a very stressful thing to watch. But with Fargo, I feel like Margie and Norm kind of make the baseline, not that it's not exciting or anything to watch, it just
Mhm.
means that, I don't know, they keep it on a level where it's just like you get swept along with it and you're not, it's not spiking my anxiety to watch it, right? It's still like
Yeah.
stressful shit's happening, but they keep it at this baseline where it's like I'm drawn along with it. I want to know how it goes. And so it's just like I really enjoyed both those performances because it's like it's very, very similar situation and characters, but two wildly different ends of the spectrum.
Mhm.
Yeah. And they do like create some tension around it. Well, I think I was gonna say like the one thing that helps that is like that competency where you always feel like you get 3 scenes of people being stupid and escalating the problem. So when it cuts to Margie, you're like, okay, she's gonna do some competent stuff and bring us closer to getting to it. Which is like what makes that kind of back and forth feel okay, where Mare's stresses are like she will do something in the case, and then when it returns to her home life, you're like, she's got this teenage daughter, she's seeing this dude writer from out of town who's got like vaguely serial killer vibes. Is he a wrong? And whereas you come back to Margie and it's just like normal home life, but what kind of still creates really interesting, like creates that simmering tension still there with her is she's pregnant, and that at some point she's going to come into collision with the 2 kidnappers. And like the entire time I was like, if this is a she's gonna die with the baby situation, I'm going to be devastated.
Yeah.
So like I had that in the back of my mind the entire time because I was like, she's too competent. And you know how movie writers do, they like, let's kill off the competent character as the big moment. And thankfully that doesn't happen. And it just turns out this lady who's the smartest person in the town and is the best cop and is also pregnant is just walking around bossing shit, and you're like, that's great, I like that, that's good.
There's so many of those things, like just little ordinary details in this movie that I really love, and like her being pregnant is one of those things. Like it's completely inconsequential to the overall plot. Like it doesn't matter that she's pregnant. There's no risk that happens there, additional risk because she's pregnant, other than the fact that, like you're describing, Tam, other than the stress that you're putting on yourself as the viewer because she's such an instantly likable character and you want nothing wrong or nothing bad to happen to her. And it's doubled by the fact that she's going to have a child. And so like the whole time you're just like, fuck, I hope this isn't the case. Yeah. But there's nothing in the movie that makes you think that that's going to be the case, right?
Yeah.
If anything, she uses it as a disarming mechanism. Like when she goes to see Jerry, she's like carrying a heavy load here. And it's
twice.
like
she says the same thing twice to him. Yeah,
she does the same thing twice, and he never bats an eyelid. And it's just like, I think she uses that in a way to get under people's skin a little bit.
Also, she eats a lot in the film. There's that one scene where she's putting like 4 different meats in there. I was like,
oh, is this Arby's?
It's more than I eat in a day.
Can we talk about the scene where she meets the guy that she went to school
Michael,
with? What a menace! Holy shit.
That is like, I think that I was taking notes, and I think that that scene is perhaps like the fact that it's clearly scripted. Like this is a whole script, and it's scripted to the point where Jerry's like stutters and stumbles and mannerisms. He says, the actor, what's the fuck? William H. Macy says, those weren't improvised or ad-lib. They were in the script. So they were performed as the Coen brothers wrote them. So this is an top to bottom scripted movie. But there's scenes that are so awkward or harrowing or like just plain that it makes, and they're delivered with such perfection that it just feels genuinely real. Like it feels unscripted. And like this scene is one of those ones where I was like, this is so awful to watch that it just feels like a reality TV show is happening in front of me. And that whole like from the first phone call, I was like, oh god, this is horrifying. Like it's one of those cringe moments where you're like, it felt like The Office, like the British Office.
What, like
which is
like a Scott Storch situation?
Yeah, it's like a peak. British Office is peak like cringe. Like you just want someone to shoot you in the moment. You're like, my life must end. I cannot watch this anymore. And that's how that scene was, where you're like, it's like watching a slow car crash happening, and you're just like, please stop.
I mean, Maria raises a great point. It's like it's weird how she was deceived by him, but no one else. And then it's like so Zach, you and I were talking about like what the point of this scene was, but it's like I think Maria raises a great point there. But I also think you've got Mike talking about his fake dead wife, making a story and making it so like ultimately simple, a simple story that he got this woman and she unfortunately died from leukemia. But that's believable. And then on the flip side, you've got Jerry, who's got a wife and he's made up this story and it's so unbelievable. And it's like, yeah, it just like keeps going and going and going and unraveling. So it's weird. Like you've got these two men both telling a story about their wife. And so Dude's Lot like raises the fantastic point here that it's the turning point of the movie.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
she gets deceived by Mike telling a sad but innocuous story. And then that's when she goes back to question Jerry because I think she always knew that something wasn't quite right there, but I think that's the point where she realizes like Mike had no reason to lie to her about that. And yet he did. And so she's like, well, what the hell else is everyone else lying about?
I think it's also interesting because it's two different, it's showing two men on two different sides of desperation, right? Like loneliness and like financial desperation, and how those two men sort of react to both of those things and the stories that they create in order to fix that flaw within themselves. I thought that was like pretty interesting last night. I made that connection when we were watching. It was like that I've never really thought about before. This is actually my favorite scene in the whole movie. Like I love this scene so much. And there's a couple of fucking great moments in this movie. And the first one is when he sits over on the other side of the table. And he says, I'm going to come sit over here, and has his arm around her. And she just very, very sweetly is like, no, I think I'd prefer if you sat over on that side. And then she does the thing where she's like, I just don't want to have to turn my neck to talk to you, which is just like so unbelievably nice of her to say that, to kind of disarm him. But then the other line that I really love is when he gets upset and he goes, you're such a super lady. Like my friends and I used to say that to each other all the time. If somebody did something nice, we'd be like, oh, you're such a super lady. It was just like, it's stuck with me for so long. A Serious Business in the chat says that they physically recoiled, and certainly like it's such a cringy scene, but it also just like that sort of, Minnesota nice. That's what I was going to get to here, Jacob, is like this movie got some criticism for kind of overly portraying the idea of Minnesota nice. And this is a perfect example of what they're talking about when they talk about that. It's somebody going out of their way, sort of like the opposite of passive aggression, where you're like going out of your way to make somebody else feel comfortable in a situation where you're uncomfortable, right? Like, and there's so much of that in this movie, especially from Margie. You know, when she knows she's being lied to the second time, she doesn't even really get into it. Like, she doesn't really even acknowledge that she knows she's being lied to until she says to him, hey, you don't have to get snippy with me. I'm just doing my job here. You know, when she's talking to Jerry in the dealership the second time. But that scene to me with Mike Yanagita is that it just encompasses this whole film. Like, I think it's the most important scene in the movie. And it's funny because last night when we were watching it, I said to Lucy, I was like, sometimes I don't understand why this scene is here, because it's just so like nebulous and weird, but it is such a really like brilliantly acted scene and really important to the overall plot.
There's an element of like exploring the idea, not the idea, but like people who escape small town Minnesota aren't necessarily better off, I think, is something that kind of stuck out with me, because he's like, he calls her up and he's like, oh, I saw you on TV,
right?
And that's why. So you're like, this guy City Slicker, who's apparently, as far as we know, done well, sees his friend
suit too, right?
and he comes in, he's wearing a suit, and obviously this is a facade, but I don't know how much of his life that he presents is true and is fake, but like, he works for an engineering company and that kind of stuff, and it kind of pushes, to me, it was like the idea of there's still stuff, there's still people who leave it, because, escaping your small town is something that in American media or even American society and culture I've run up against a lot. You know, people always being like, you want to get out of these small towns and go somewhere else. That's when life truly begins, and etc. etc. And then this is kind of was like the idea of like, no, it's not really that. It's what you make of it as a person. Because like Margie is in a small town and she's kicking ass and she's happy with what she's got. And it seems she's sharp as a tack, you know, she's figuring things out. When you've got this Mike guy who's left and he's as much of a wreck as he was when people knew him in school or younger days, and if not is worse, and is like way more pathetic than anyone else even around in the small town. Like, and the idea of Minnesota nice is really interesting to me because like the only really nice person I see is Margie. Everyone else is Minnesota not nice at all. Like everyone else is like fucking shit. Like Jerry's not nice. He acts nice, but he's an awful person. Like the dad,
Yeah,
the
anybody who's gonna go
father-in-law
out
is
of their
bad.
way to try to get their wife kidnapped, I don't think classifies
Yeah,
as like a
exactly.
nice dude. Right.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of people in that movie that are just it's either Minnesota nice or Minnesota boring. The other character that really sticks out in my mind for some reason, and it's the same reason where you're like is why did that happen? It's the lady who like is working at the
Norm is nice. He made
diner.
eggs. Serious Business in the chat says Norm is nice. He made eggs.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Norm
Like
is
he's
great.
aggressively nice, but it's one of those things where it's like it's a gesture that feels like that's all they really have going on. Like small things are like small moments are what they live for. The other person that sticks out in that weird way is the lady who's working at the diner, like who rings them up, and it stays with her for just a bit too long where you're like, is this character meant to be important for some reason? Like she asks like how were things and he's like, yeah, it was fine. And then it just like lingers on her. She does like a small awkward smile and you're like, what's going on here?
Like even the two women that they were hooking up with when Margie goes to like investigate, goes to question them. And the one woman just describes Buscemi's character as funny looking. And he's like,
That's my favorite line from the movie.
Can you be more specific? And she says, no, he was just funny looking. And then she's her follow-up is like, so you were having sex with these guys? And she's like, yeah. But she can't say how he looked,
And then the other guy,
he also like describes him as funny looking.
He just describes, and you know why that I like that? It's because it's true to real life. Like Steve Buscemi is funny looking, but describe why he's funny looking. You can't really. He's
eyes.
Like, but like he looks absolutely fine, and also is very funny looking. And I was like, I don't know how I would describe Steve Buscemi as funny looking. He's kind of normal, but very funny looking. Like he's just like, it's just slightly off. But like he's like, you look at him from some angles, you're like, that's a very handsome man. And you look at him another angle, you're like, yeah, it's funny looking. So I completely understood like every one of those people who are like, yeah, it's just funny looking.
Yeah. Apparently they wrote they wrote Steve Buscemi's character for Steve Buscemi. Yeah. Like they had that in mind. Same with Peter Stormare and same with
Francis McDormand.
I don't know if we want to get into this, but I think this is the best use of Peter Stormare I've ever seen.
Oh, I love Peter Stormare in this movie. He's so good. I was thinking
about this last night. Like the guy has 6 lines in the whole movie, maybe. Yeah. But he's
6.
I'm just guessing. Like he
that's about right.
That's about right though. Yeah,
that's about right. Yeah.
But like he's so intimidating and so like menacing in this movie, and just the way he's kind of looking at people like this the whole time. It's just it's fucked, man.
He plays he plays the Terminator. Like he is the Terminator in this movie. Like he says barely anything. He just wanders around. He's like got the vacant look of a psychopath, like where there's nothing happening in there except just like the smallest things. And he is like one of those, like didn't develop as a child and is crazy because of it. Like when he's watching TV and he's like just drawn in by like the most boring like soap opera thing.
He's like almost drooling as he's watching.
Yeah. And like the way he's like, I want to go to Pancake House. He's a child with a cigarette. Like, and all he knows is like lashing out. But like the reason I like him in this because like people use Peter Stormare in their products, their media, and it's always the worst way where they give him they make him like choose a scenery, and I don't think that is his strength at all. Like even in John Wick, where he's like in the first movie, like he's doing too much. He's like the focal point of like Until Dawn, I think it is, or
Yeah, he's
whatever it is.
the doctor.
Yeah, and like every
Hound.
time, like I feel like this is gonna sound really mean, but like if you're giving Peter Stormare loads of lines, you're screwing it up. Don't do that because Peter Stormare's power is in like saying very little, looking menacing, and then just like being very very psychopathically unnerving. And like in this movie, I thought he was amazing. I thought he was like one of my favorite performances of it, and I imagine this is what the performance that got him a lot of like recognition and got him more work, and like people wanted him, but then they use him in a way that just doesn't work. I've never seen Peter Stormare in anything other than this where I was like, he's good.
I feel like
Bit of a tangent though. Constantine, he plays a pretty good
Satan.
Stormare.
Yeah, he's
I love
he's
doing
good in that.
I love him as
He
the
is good
gross.
in that.
I love him as the gross Ripper Doc in Minority Report too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was fine.
The one of my favorite pieces of trivia about this movie is that he was supposed to be in another Coen Brothers movie, but couldn't appear in it because he was filming something else, or he was on. I think he was in a play or something during that time, so he couldn't be in that movie. So they cast him in this role, and then when he wasn't filming for in the times when he had off of filming for Fargo, he was just driving around Minnesota looking at towns with Swedish names. Because he's a Swedish actor, so he just went to these Swedish towns just to check
Just
them out.
All right.
He like okay, he's got the same energy as like Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men.
Yes.
Like he's
That's a
got
good
that. Like the Coen brothers love that kind of archetype for themselves. And like he has that. He's like the nemesis in fucking Resident Evil, where he just like wanders in, and you're like, oh shit, this is not gonna go well. Whenever he's around, you're like, he's not here to chill. He's here to fuck some shit up, and he almost always does.
Oh wait.
And
He has 18 lines of dialogue in the entire movie
That's
and
shocking to me.
never says more than a complete
Yeah.
sentence at a time. By comparison, Carl has over 150 lines of dialogue.
Well, there's that scene, the pancake scene, when he's talking, Carl's talking to him, and he just says no. You know, his answer is just no. And Carl goes on this whole rant about how he hasn't said a single word the whole time they've been driving and all this. And then like Carl is just talking to fill that space, and it's such a perfect illustration of like both of those characters, because Carl just can't stand to be quiet. He can't stand to have like nothing conversational happening, you know, and he's so jittery and funny looking.
In my mind, it's literally like when it cuts to Peter Stormare's character, it's like not, you know, the opposite of Carl is like someone who can't like stand the sound isn't like someone, you know, who's he would ordinarily, you'd think it'd be someone who's like quite self-assured and is like, I'm good with just being quiet. I don't think that's the case with Peter. So I think it's like literally Homer Simpson. It like fades into his mind. It's just Homer going meow, 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 meow. Like that's how it is in his head. There's nothing going on in there. And like he's activated by very like childish kind of stimuli, like a TV show, cereal. They show him eating cereal. That's the one thing that they show him eating constantly. He's like a kid, and like just fits of rage. And I think like having him be a very simple, like kind of X factor in the movie is like, my worry was at some point Margie is gonna have a kind of standoff against him, and that's where it's gonna go wrong for her. And luckily that doesn't happen. But he was the major threat, and like, for me in this movie, like as for Margie's competence, like the threat level was only matched by like him. Everyone else felt like they're too stupid and she can take care of it, but like he was like the main. So I feel like he's the main antagonist to Margie being the protagonist.
Peter Stormare later formed a band called Blonde from Fargo as an homage to his breakthrough American role.
That's
which
insane.
I really enjoy.
Tam, this is the first time that you've seen Fargo. I guess my first question to you is, how did you manage to miss this film?
I honestly don't know. There was a period where I did for a while think, have I seen this movie before? Because like I like watched, there were scenes that I was looking at and I was like, I've seen this. Where have I seen this before? But I think it's just one of those movies that's so iconic that it just shows up in a lot of places. And how I missed it, I don't know. Like there was a period where I watched a lot of films, and then like once I got into games, like other things fell off, and and like you only have so much time. So I think this is just one that has it. I've always known I should watch this, but I just never ended up watching it. Yeah, I just like I think it's just one of those literally like missed connections moments. Yeah.
So now that you've seen it, do you feel like it lives up to the hype? Do you feel like it deserved a spot in the back of your mind all these years?
It's interesting because I can clearly see that it's an amazing film and like really well made and really well written. I don't feel like it's like I like it a lot and I appreciate it a lot and I respect it, but it's not one of those movies that really like I am like besotted with, and like I feel like this is like something that is really important to me, and not everything has to be. I think there's also an element of films that are like films that are essentially about nothing don't really stick with me like for an extended period of time. I appreciate them in the moment, and I'm like, okay, cool. It's the same with like Three Billboards, which is something that we'll come to later. Like, I think that is an incredible film. Like, what a film! Haven't thought about it until today because someone mentioned it. Like, it's like one of those films, and like, I think I respect it more than I love it, if you get what I mean. Like, I appreciate it a lot, and I'm glad that I've finally seen it, and I understand the reverence for it. And I also kind of like it's lessened by the fact that this is a Coen Brothers thing. They do this a lot, if you get what I mean. Like at a certain point,
the Coen Brothers' next movie is the one that they directed right after this is The Big Lebowski, and I feel like that movie is even more the way that you're describing, where nothing happens. The main character, like, he doesn't learn anything by the end of the movie. Like, he's still the same person at the end of that film. So yeah, I'm kind of curious, like, have you seen a lot of other Lebowski films? Have you seen a lot of other Coen Brothers films, and this one just happened to slip through the cracks?
Yeah, so I have seen. I need to get a list of their movies up, just to make sure. But I know I've seen a bunch of their other films a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the big ones. Fargo, yes.
After this movie, they did Lebowski, and then they did Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I think all three of those movies are just like perfect films, like just a
okay, maybe I actually haven't. I've seen Raising Arizona. I've seen A Serious Man. I've seen a lot of their old stuff like Hail Caesar. I don't think I've seen the stuff that people know them for. I've never seen The Big Lebowski.
Have you seen No Country for Old Men?
I've seen bits of No Country for Old Men.
Oh, interesting.
That's the thing.
Hey, hang on. Did you not come to see that with us when we saw it with the IGN UK boys? We saw it with the.
No.
Oh no, I'm thinking of There Will Be Blood. Oh.
Yeah. I watched There Will Be Blood with
both up for Oscars.
Yeah.
Yes.
I watched There Will Be Blood a bunch of times. Obviously, I watched it with the live performance from Thom Yorke.
Thom Yorke.
Wow,
Thom
really?
Yorke. Yeah,
Johnny Greenwood
Johnny
probably.
Greenwood, not Thom Yorke.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Thom Yorke's mate.
It's okay.
Johnny
The Radiohead
Greenwood.
episode is still several.
We're doing
weeks
the
away.
Radiohead episode.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I've seen True Grit. True Grit's the one.
True Grit's
film.
with
True Grit's all right with Haley Stanfield and
Haley Stanfield.
I love True Grit.
Yeah.
I do not know this man. That's my favorite.
I watched No Country for Old Men last year, and I think you'll really like it, Tam.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
great
really
movie.
good.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of the Coen Brothers movies that I watched were films that I watched when I was kind of like really into learning about films and just experiencing a lot of them. So what they did, Darkman? Is that real? Holy shit!
I don't know.
No, that's Sam Raimi. Apparently they're involved in Darkman. But yeah, stuff like Bridge of Spies and like the movies True Grit and Hail Caesar and that kind of stuff. But the stuff that they clearly are known for is stuff that I haven't seen very much of, and I've not seen the TV show either, which I'm told is great. But I think I might check it out.
The first two seasons of Fargo are like especially great, and what's nice about the television show, and I know we're kind of off on a tangent here, but what's nice about the show is that they each season it's an anthology show, so like each season is set in a different decade about the town, and it's a different story, mostly different cast, so you can watch one. You don't have to watch 5 seasons of it. You know, you can watch one, and then it's really good. So we talked a little bit about what you thought. Does it stand the test of time? I'm curious, Lucy, Jake, what do you guys think after subsequent viewings? how does it hold up?
I'm kind of with I think I'm kind of with Timur here. Like I have a lot of reverence for this film as well. I think my favorite thing about it is the direction. There's just so many decisions that they made that I would have never thought to make, and like clearly other directors at the time would have never thought to make, because there was truly nothing like Fargo at the time. And I think that's what like enrapture like got my attention the most with that movie, and why I still enjoy watching it, even though it may not be like up there for me, at least in terms of their movies or just movies in general. But I think just like how unique that movie feels compared to so much of what you typically see. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, right? It is just a crime drama, but it just has such a unique flavor and wrapper to it that I think makes it really stand out and just makes it a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, Lucy?
I really enjoy it. Like I don't know, it feels weird to describe it as like a relaxing film, but you know, I just think it's everyone involved is just working to the height of like their capabilities. Like they're all so good. Like I can't stop, like every time Frances McDormand's on screen, I can't take my eyes off her. She's fantastic. And I think that's just like, it's really compelling. And I like, and I think maybe watching it now, I am exhausted with Marvel at the moment. Like, no spoils or anything, but like Spider-Man didn't really do anything for me. I'm not watching the TV shows or anything. And I think it's because I'm kind of fed up of like this big end of the world thing that has to be a big plot point in every movie right now. And so I'm kind of taking a lot of enjoyment from pulling back and just seeing smaller scale stories, but that are told really, really well. It's like, don't get me wrong, I still love Marvel, but there's only so many times that I can see, you know, New York get destroyed or something. And so I really enjoyed Fargo for that. It's like a nice little break. And also, like, I'm a huge Deakins fan. I love the Coens. But yeah, Frances, my sweet girl.
I love this movie so much. Like I said, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. A lot of Coen brother movies make it into my all-time faves. This one, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, especially, I really love. This movie to me is like really important into my overall like film oeuvre, just because I think it was the first. I didn't see it when it came out. It would have come out when I was in the 5th grade, so I would have been maybe a little bit too young. I do remember it coming out, but I don't remember seeing it until I was probably in high school. But I remember it was one of the first movies that I watched and thought like, oh, is this what art house films are? Like, is this, you know, like, is this what, like, it was just a movie kind of like I had never seen before. And that has always really stuck with me. I think it's why I've watched it so many times. It's a great movie to put on in the background. It's a great movie to watch over and over again, because I feel like I see something new or get something new out of every subsequent rewatch. This time around, I really loved the scene that Tam talked about earlier with the bartender when the cop goes to question him. Like I just like I really enjoyed that this time around. I think it's perfectly paced and perfectly acted. Like everyone is coming in at a 10, and I really love this movie. I think it's kind of a seminal. It's a seminal movie in a lot of ways, but I think mostly for its ability to portray ordinary people in a less than ordinary situation in a way that feels so earnest and real. And watching it too, as like the older it gets and the more it becomes a period piece, is like really nice for me. Especially like I lived in Minnesota for about a year when I was a kid, and it's funny to see, because I would have been in Minnesota a couple of years after this movie came out, but it's funny for me to see that kind of stuff, you know, like just seeing like old Dodge Caravans, and you know, like the way that the houses are decorated and the clothes that people are wearing. It's a very of a time film. And yeah, I really love it so much. It's one of my favorite movies.
I think it's also a very inspirational film. If in terms of like if you're interested in maybe writing a film, directing a film, or like writing something, if you get what I mean. Like that's what it's like I came away from it like really feeling like this is something that I can stick on to help me get into a place where I feel like I can make something, if you get what I mean, because it's very simple narratively, and it's very simple in terms of dialogue. It's very simple in terms of obviously like direction, but like there's some incredible flourishes here, but like there's nothing crazy happening. And these days it's easy to kind of think that you need to be doing a lot to make your film interesting. Like the film that I see is on the polar opposite of this is Tenet, or anything pretty much that is, or like what the fuck's that other one called that he
Nolan.
did?
Inception?
The Inception, like where it's just overly complicated, and they're both interesting films. Like I enjoyed Tenet for the most part, and Inception is great, but like that's how I feel like a lot of people come into the idea of writing a narrative, where they feel like they need this many characters, they need all this intertwining stuff to happen, and it all needs to pay off in a certain way. Or even stuff with like Marvel movies, for example. You think that these days to make, you know, a movie that's impactful, you need to have this world-ending scale, and from a production side, even like the crazy special effects and CG, when actually like you can take a very simple concept and give it a strong sense of place and character, and find people that really able to sell it, and that can stand shoulder to shoulder with something like the blockbuster movies, at least in impact, if you get what I mean. And like I watched that movie and I was like, it's good because like I'm working on various things just out of, you know, just get the creativity and creative juices flowing. And one of the things I find myself constantly doing, because of the things that we consume AAA games, we watch blockbuster movies. It's almost like when you stop paying attention to what you're doing, you start walking towards those kind of like ideas automatically, where suddenly you're like, oh, this has turned into a big deal. So like I constantly try and focus on smaller stories. And this is one of those movies that really like drives home the idea that smaller can be better if you're just a little more thoughtful about it, if you get what I mean. So from like a production and kind of like a kind of make something perspective, it's quite inspiring in that regard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I've always preferred smaller scale movies like this, is kind of just what you're saying. Like they do feel inspirational. It's like I'm not saying I could write something that good, but I could like feasibly write something that could feasibly be produced, that could, like, I don't know, it gets
there's
sparks
a
flying.
lot of feasibility going on over there, Jake.
True. But like, I mean, sorry, I saw Spider-Man and I enjoyed Spider-Man, but like I've never walked out of a Marvel movie and been like, I feel inspired to make something. Like never.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not. I mean, and it's cool that I'm sure other people feel differently, and that's great. But like there's just like a tangibility there that's like there's
And
such a high post, and like what's even more comforting though is like a lot of that stuff isn't very well written. Like it's good, and it like hits a lot of beats that need to be hit, but like then you see a movie like this and it's like, okay, they're bringing interesting characters to the table that they explore, and you really just realize that like it like sometimes just having a well written character is all you need. You don't need all of these like weird twists and different ideas and high profile actors. It's just come up with a character and then fill out the rest, you know. Like that's what I was always taught in school. It was just like start with the character and just like write out that character to death, like come up with their age, what they do, and you really feel it in this movie. I mean, like even what you were saying earlier, right? How Frances McDormand and her husband were asked to like come up with backstory for those characters that they were kind of implementing in the script, and like you can tell that's like that influenced the script. You know, it's I love watching movies like this for that reason.
Yeah. There are a few more things that just trivia wise that I wanted to cover off on before we get into our weekly recommendations here. First of all, Prince is sort of in this movie. I say
blew my mind.
Yeah. So
what the hell was that?
what I'm sorry, what'd you say?
No, like what the hell was that? It was just like it was
Oh.
so weird because you caught it when we were watching the
last
credits.
night we were watching it and the credits were rolling, and I noticed one of the characters had the Prince symbol by their name, and I had to research it, and it looks like somebody brought it up here earlier in the chat as well. But it looks like the Coen brothers, being from Minnesota, were actually like relatively close with Prince, and they wanted him to be in the movie. He wanted to be in the movie, but they couldn't make it work out schedule wise. So they actually included as one of the extras, one of the bodies laying in the snow in one of the scenes. They credited that performance to the symbol of Prince at the time, but had a little like smiley face, like a little like wink in the middle of it. So a lot of people, he was Man in Field.
Yeah, Man in the Field.
A lot of people had this question of like, is Prince really in Fargo? Yeah, it is sideways with a smiley face in it. So I thought that was a pretty funny little nod. But I definitely had to stop and check last night. Like I was like, what? How have I never noticed that Prince is in this movie? The other thing, so obviously we know that the 2014 FX series has been hugely successful, and both critically and commercially, like it's been a big hit for FX. But did you all know that there was actually a pilot made much earlier in 1997? That was continuing the story, a direct continuation of the story from the movie, starring Edie Falco as the Margie role.
Wait, is in Sopranos Edie Falco?
Do you know another Edie Falco? Who else? Who's another person that has the name
Edith Falco? Edith Falcon.
Captain Falcon's daughter, Edie.
Yeah. So Edie Falco is going to play the Margie role, and the pilot was actually directed by Kathy Bates. But it was never picked up anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, and apparently the pilot is like really, really good. Apparently it's like a great pilot. It just never got off the ground. The Coen brothers are not involved in that one, but they are executive producers on the FX series. Which is interesting. So just a couple of little trivia notes there. Did Andrea ever get back to you?
She did.
Okay, let's find out. Drum roll, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to Andrea.
I am indeed from the real Fargo. Just went home to visit.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got lots of Fargo facts. Are you talking about the But then she said, "Are you talking about the TV show?" And I said, "I would talk about the movie."
Yeah.
But she says she has lots of those, and she said it's so good, it's an absolute classic.
See?
So there you have it. Andrea Renee is
even the locals.
Fargo approved.
Fargo approved. Check out.
But that's the thing. I don't get
games.
Yeah. Shout out to What's Good Games and to Andrea. I wonder if now that I know that, I'll start hearing it in her accent a little bit, but I don't think I've never picked up on that before.
I want all of us to look at this comment right now from Creed in the chat. First time chatter, and what a banger of a comment. Voice of the Normandy, Edie Falco. Very good. Welcome to the chat. Thank you for that.
Well done.
Thank you for that.
Imagine an AI that has a Minnesotan accent.
Oh God, I love it.
That would that would be wild.
So good.
So
and the pilot's on YouTube. Thank you.
Oh, right on.
Pod Bay doors.
So I guess the big
the
question
Reapers
is,
are coming, don't you know?
Oh no. We made it a really long time without doing these accents. I was really proud of us, and now we're really going.
We gotta cap it off. You know?
Yeah.
So I guess the real question is, does Fargo end up in the Shame Hall of Fame? Like, do we think that Fargo goes down in the Shame Hall of Fame as things that we've missed that we would put out as a recommendation as a group for people that are looking at their pile of shame? The Shame Hall of Fame. That's something that I just coined right now, by the way.
It's very good.
I like it.
I thought you know.
I feel like the Shame Hall. Does the Shame Hall of Fame have a limited number of positions?
Well, like Room 101.
Yeah, is it like limited space? Because right now it feels like we should put it in there because there's nothing else in there.
Yeah.
I just mean like collectively, do we think
collectively?
Yeah. If somebody says to us like, is Fargo worth my time in the year of our Lord 2022?
This is the year of Winnie the Pooh. I've crowned it.
2022.
I mean, I'm waiting for the McElroys to like properly anoint 2022.
Oh,
but yeah, Winnie the Pooh is in the public domain now. So if the question is, would you recommend this? Like, is this movie worth your time? Absolutely it is. Like I struggle to see anything quote unquote wrong or unlikable about Fargo. I think it's really
an hour and
well
a
made.
half long, and it does not feel. It feels like 20 minutes. It genuinely feels
Breezes
like at
through.
most 45 minutes. Like I was dreading sitting down for 2 hours to only do one thing, because I have that good ADHD brain. But like, it was over before I even knew it. Like, and I was like, oh, that was great. I had a good time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I'd add it to the Shame Hall of Fame.
You know that I'm gonna put it in there. It's one of my all-time faves. So
I was gonna say, I don't
Fargo
think we had a
stays.
choice.
Fargo stays.
Ew.
Okay, let's get into our weekly recommendations here before we sign off. Jake, you
Yeah, I should go first.
we mentioned this earlier, and it's kind of thematically on point, but tell us a little bit about your recommendation, my dude.
So after I watched Fargo, I was like kind of on a Frances McDormand kick because, as we just talked about at length, she's great in Fargo and pretty much whatever else she's in. I mean, I don't think I've seen a bad movie that she's in.
I mean,
So I watched.
She's in a Transformers movie, isn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, is she?
I think. Oh,
I've only
so.
seen
but
one
I think
Transformers movie.
she
didn't see
was
the
the
other ones.
best bit in it. The best thing in it.
But yeah, I watched Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, a movie that I actually never saw when it came out. I remember really wanting to see it, but I just didn't. I think it came out like 2016 or 2017. Missed it. So after watching Fargo, I was like, I'm going to go back and watch another Frances McDormand film. And I think that movie is a great follow-up to Fargo. If you haven't seen Fargo or just saw Fargo and you maybe want more of that, I mean, it's a different director. It's a little heavier, I would say. It's a lot
bloody hell, yeah.
It still has like funny moments. It's like got that dark humor to it, but it can be rough at times, but it's very good.
Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell, as well as Frances McDormand, but those two also incredible in this movie. So good, such a good movie.
Yeah,
great.
Sam
shout.
Rockwell. I forgot just like how loathsome he is in it.
I think Sam Rockwell's like one of the most underrated actors of our generation.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's amazing. I think he's like so brilliant in everything that he's in. Good shout, Jake. Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Lucy, do you want to tell us a little bit about your recommendation for this week?
So I'm watching. I've almost finished, but I'm like that ADHD brain. I'm doing it in 2 sections. Thirst, which is a 2009 movie by Park Chan-wook, who you might know as the director of The Handmaiden, Old Boy, Korean movie, and it stars the main guy is a Catholic priest. If you've seen Parasite, he's the dad from that. Fantastic actor. He's a priest, Catholic priest who wants to help people, and then unwittingly becomes a vampire. It's a very sexy movie.
Is this the right trailer?
Wait. Let me check. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
good.
Yes, it is.
All right. You're talking about a priest, and I'm like, I think he's a doctor, but now I see he's in the priest attire. So okay, I got it.
Oh, he's a priest. Yeah. So he and then it's a very sexy movie, but I'm really enjoying it. It's like it's taking some twists and turns that I didn't necessarily expect it would. It also kind of I'm very intrigued to see where it goes, let's just say. There's some other stuff like that woman that you briefly saw there, like she's in this shitty situation with like she's basically kind of trapped in her own home, like she owes a lot of herself to a lot of, she owes everything to this woman who took her in when she was a baby, but there is friction within that
Don't give
family.
It all away.
But no, like this is, the first 20 minutes of the movie basically. And I haven't even finished it, so that's what I'm in the middle of watching. It's really good. I rented it from Amazon and it was $2.99. It wasn't even $3.99.
Wow. Discount Thirst.
Discount Thirst.
I'll go ahead and go next. So I've been watching, and I know I'm a little bit late to the party on this, even though it just came out last month, but I've been watching Arcane on Netflix. And I should say that I'm not a League of Legends guy. I've never played 1 second of League of Legends. I don't know anything about the characters or the lore. I've never looked into it at all. I just heard the show was good and I wanted to watch it, and holy shit. I've watched the first 4 episodes, and it's maybe one of the best things that Netflix has done. It's definitely the best like video game adaptation. Like
whoa. Better than Castlevania?
Yeah, I would
haven't
say
gotten
so.
to the end.
I'm a huge Castlevania fan,
Yeah.
as many of you know, and I love that series. Arcane is better.
Wow.
Damn.
Okay.
That's awesome.
All
I mean,
right.
I love the Castlevania anime series. I mean, anime series as well. But yeah, Arcane, the world building, the characters, like the writing, the animation is fucking insane. Like it just looks incredible. Like it's just I'm really really impressed with this show and I'm really enjoying it. And it's been a while since I've been watching something that I'm like I watched 2 episodes last night and it was midnight and I was like I could make it through the end of this series tonight. Like I could
Mhm.
literally just stay up and watch it all, but I chose not to. But it's great. I really love it. And
That
I
art style.
yeah.
It makes me want a Dishonored series
I
so
was
badly.
just gonna say that. Like
It
I
looks
would love
exactly
to see
like Dishonored.
I would love to see Dishonored from this studio because they've just absolutely nailed it. Season 1 of Netflix Castlevania is only like 4 episodes long, Jacob. It's actually really short.
Jacob says
I've
it's a
seen it.
slog.
Yeah, but he says it's a slog.
Oh, this Jacob.
Yeah. No, not yeah.
Yeah,
You're Jake.
I'm
Anyway,
Jake, yeah.
that's my recommendation. Arcane, very very good on Netflix now. I think IGN gave it a 10. I think it was like their television
Yeah, they
series
did.
of the year. Like, and now I understand why it's killer.
Were you
Also,
telling
now-
me, Zach, that like didn't we talk about this in a previous episode? And you were like, yeah, people have been telling me to watch it, but they're all people who play a lot of League of Legends. Or was it? I have this conversation with somebody else.
I know I talked about Arcane as like one of the things from 2020 that I had just not gotten around
Okay,
to.
yeah,
But
I wonder if that's it.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of in the same boat, right? Everyone who's told me about Arcane was like, "Well, you don't need to play the game," but they have played the game a lot, and I'm like, "All right."
See,
I don't,
I'm on the opposite end where everybody that's recommended it
Yeah.
to me has also put the caveat out there of like I don't play League of Legends. Like,
So that has me more interested because,
Yeah.
like,
but also friend of the show, I was texting friend of the show Andrew Goldfarb about it, and he was saying that he watched it and he was like, wow, this world building is so great. I should see what this lore is about. And he started reading about League of Legends and then he was like, nah, never mind.
Yeah, it's
No,
this
like-
is the best distillation of their lore
Yeah.
in a while.
A lot of people, like a couple of people we've spoken to about it, have started playing Teamfight Tactics.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And like we went out for lunch the other day with some friends who literally just told us about Teamfight Tactics. We looked over and there was an entire table of youths just playing it on their phones, just like
The connect. What I like about it is the connect. Like it takes place pre League of Legends, so characters, champions, or whatever they're called, that are in League of Legends, you see them formed in the series. Like Heimerdinger is a big character in the game, but like this is his backstory, and without spoiling stuff about anyone else, but like there are characters who are undergoing an arc which will leave them as the character that they are in League of Legends, which is really interesting, I think. And like in League of Legends, if you look at a picture of them or like see them in the game, they look generic as fuck. But then once you've seen the show, you're like, oh wow, you got here and you're like this because of everything that happened, and it's like got a lot of weight to it, which I think is really interesting.
Nova00 says Arcane and Ruin King have been really great ways to get into League lore as someone who has avoided League of Legends outside of dabbling in Wild Rift. First of all, thanks for hopping into the chat. It's first time chatter from Nova, so I appreciate you joining the conversation. And secondly, like, yeah, it has interested me. Like I've heard Ruin King is also very good, which is like a turn-based RPG. So
Ruin King is from Airship Syndicate, which is the team that did the Darksiders stuff and then moved on to like Joe Mad and those guys.
did they do Battle Chasers?
They did Battle Chasers Night War. Yeah,
I only played like a few hours of Battle Chasers, but I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And also the main theme of Arcane is the song that. Remember during the Game Awards where there was an extended section of Imagine Dragons singing a weird song that everyone wants to be my enemy, and I was like, why is this here?
Yeah.
And then it's this song, it's that song.
But wasn't Sting there as well?
Yeah, but
Sting has a song in there, right?
In Arcane?
Yeah, Sting's
not in Arcane. No.
Wait, why was Sting at the Game Awards? Hang on, Sting, Arcane.
See,
yeah,
Jacob
Sting
was
Arcane
saying
song.
that Sting tune is a banger.
Okay.
It's Sting feat Ray Chen. What could have been?
Okay.
Oh wait, I know where that is.
Oh, wait.
Okay, I think
I'm sorry.
where that is.
I am the monster you created. You ripped out all my parts. And worst of all, for me to live, I gotta kill the part of me that saw that I needed you more.
What is this? Why are you doing
That's
this?
the lyrics,
those are the lyrics
to the song.
And like it's a very, very good synopsis of Arcane. So
I'll say this.
All right,
I'll say
all right.
this. I like Arcane despite the fact that Imagine Dragons does the main theme. So that's saying a lot.
Honestly, like
Damn.
within the context of the show, it does slap. Like
Yeah.
you're like, okay, fair enough. I see why you use because they use it in the actual show as well later on, and it won't make sense.
I feel like I should have watched Arcane over break instead of
Me
The
too.
Witcher season 2 because
Oh, but I like The Witcher. You didn't like season 2?
It's fine.
Oh, I liked it quite a
I
bit.
haven't finished it.
Arcane's great. You can still knock it out. It's like
Yeah,
it's like
I
8
mean,
episodes.
maybe
9
not
episodes.
before tomorrow, but
yeah.
Maybe they'll get
Jay-
actual dragons for season 2, not just imaginary ones. Jason
Yeah,
Nitty.
Jason Nitty's
No longer imaginary. Tam, tell us about your pick.
Yeah, so I've been watching Mob Psycho 100, which is a
Whoops.
show that I started a while back when it first came out, and then I think I fell off because of something like not because I didn't like it or anything. I got distracted with some other work stuff, and then I realized, oh, I've never actually finished Mob Psycho 100, and I've never seen any of season 2 either. And Mob Psycho 100 is a fascinating kind of creation where it comes from this dude who
Did One Punch
didn't
Man, right?
yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he made loads of small comics just for like web comics, basically. Like I think it was like around the time when apps that were free comic apps, basically, were like, yeah, if you make a comic, you can just dump it on here. And he made Mob Psycho 100, and it popped off in a massive way. And it's just about this kid who's exists in a very normal life, and he is an Esper, which means he's like he's a psychic. He's got psychic powers, and he has psychic powers that are above anyone else that I exist. But he's incredibly powerful, but he's also the most plain, normal, boring kid that has ever existed. And he has no interest in being a hero. He has no interest in being some sort of savior to mankind. All he wants to do is figure out how to be a normal kid. He's socially awkward. He's like, he's never talked to a girl that he likes, and he's like just sweet and but kind of plain to a fault. And he's mentored in his like Esper world by a guy named Reagan, who's basically a scam artist, who's convinced the world that he's the greatest thing in the psychic world and is all powerful, but he has no psychic power. He's basically grifting using this kid. But at the same time, they have this relationship where he is genuinely trying to mentor him. The kind of hook of the show is Mob. Shigeo is his name, but everyone calls him Mob. He's also like repressed a lot of his he's a very anxious kid. He's also repressed a lot of his feelings in a way, because he had one incident where he lashed out and some bad stuff happened with his psychic power, and since then he's like just crammed it all down, and he is like a boring piece of white bread because of it. But things
boring piece
keep
of white bread.
yeah, and like big things keep happening to him that kind of spike his anxiety. So there is a constant countdown happening during the show. Is counting up to 100, which is the level on which he can no longer contain his emotions and his anxieties. And when it reaches 100, like he manifests his power in a way that he cannot control, and basically shit gets real wild, real crazy, because he's basically not in control anymore of his full potential. And it is such an amazing show. It is because it's like the plainness of him versus the world around him. Like he meets characters that are like a reflection of him. Like one of the main kind of fights in the early part of the show is he meets another Esper, and this Esper is powerful as well. But unlike him, this Esper believes that he is the main character of the world, where he thinks that the world exists for him because he never knew there was anyone else like him. So you get this clash of ideologies where you get this kid who's like basically cheat coding his way through life, and is actually quite pathetic. And you get Mob, who is like the most forgettable. Like there's various scenes where people are like things are happening, and like the main antagonist doesn't even register that Mob is there because he's that boring. He's so plain that he's not the star of his own show. And then like they'll look at him and be like, "Holy shit, I didn't even know that you were there." And like that's the opposition between them, and it's a fantastic show, and it explores important things like mental health and having anxiety and the impact that can have on you and relationships and the ordinariness of life. Like, it's super deep.
Jake, you think you'll watch this?
No anime.
I mean, if we make it a thing we have to watch next season, then possibly.
Yeah. There's also a bit where he joins like a workout club and it's full of like super buff dudes and he can barely lift the weight, but like it's so sweet because they welcome him with open arms and they like protect him, and like he gets in trouble and you get these super buff dudes appearing to take care of him, and it's like so wholesome. It's such a nice show at times. Yeah, and like the animation's ridiculous. Like it goes
really
from
cool.
like very normal animated to like, oh god, they must have spent thousands on this, and it's like awesome.
That's awesome. So there you have it. Those are our recommendations. Arcane, 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, Thirst, Mob Psycho 100. Gang, that's it for our show this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks, January 16th. We'll be back with our first video game episode, and we're really starting with a banger here because we are the first up on the docket. Oh, well, it switched over to this right when I clicked over, but it is, in fact, Metal Gear Solid, the original Metal Gear. So, Tam, is there anything that you want to impart to the lads, both here and abroad, what they need to know if they've not played Metal Gear Solid, and
also how to play it, too.
And also how to play it.
Yeah, I think so. Remind me who on this, Lucy hasn't
Lucy
finished it.
and Jake have not played it.
Lucy and Jake. Okay. So the tricky thing is it's hard to find. You can usually it's on GOG. That's the easiest way to get it. There's you might need to do some like messing around with like input stuff.
The key binding
sucks,
yeah.
Shit.
There is like a guide. You can Google it. There is a guide to like download a key mapper thing that will let you play with a PlayStation controller, which I highly recommend. And other than that, it's on the PlayStation Classic if you own one of those. It's also available in various other ways. It's very easy to type "How do I play Metal Gear Solid" into Google and find a variety of ways to play it. What I'll say is like, stick with it. It is not a long game. It might feel long, but it is genuinely a 5-hour game, like 5 or 6 hours.
You can get through it pretty quickly.
You can get through it super quickly.
Knock it down to easy if you gotta,
Yeah, and like the narrative is important here, and like give it its space to breathe, and also remember it was released at a time, because even like there's no lip syncing, there's some real like dodgy looking graphics by today's standard, but
there's a lot of problematic shit in there.
There's some problematic stuff in there. Not a crazy amount, but yeah.
It was of a time.
It was created by a horny Japanese man.
Yeah, it sure was. Well, there you have it, gang. That's it for Lads on Tour this week. Thank you guys so much for joining me, Lucy, Tam, Jake. Thanks to all the lads in the chat for coming out. We'll see you on January 16th for Metal Gear Solid. I think that'll be a really fun episode, actually. We're going to really get into the nitty-gritty. Just knowing Tam, expect like a 3-hour episode coming out of that one.
Yeah. I'm gonna also stream the game on my Twitch.
Me too.
Yeah, Lucy and Tam are going to stream it. Yeah, so I'm sorry, say that again.
Twitch.tv/TomorH. I'll probably pick a day this coming week of the 3 to do Metal Gear Solid. And yeah, do that.
Lucy, where do you stream?
Twitch.tv/LucyJamesGames. I will be streaming Metal Gear on Tuesday. Well, I'll start my playthrough Tuesday. I usually start like 5:36 p.m. PT, but I'll put those on YouTube. I'll put VODs on YouTube because I think that'll be a fun little series.
Nice.
Yeah. Then.
I'm probably not going to stream Metal Gear Solid. I'll probably just replay that elsewhere. But I do stream Tuesdays and Thursday evenings and Saturday mornings at Zacharias D. Right now, I'm playing Returnal. I'm doing the Returnal challenge, which is I give myself 3 runs to get as far as I can possibly get in Returnal. And then I typically jump over to another game. Right now, I'm playing, in addition to that, Fist, Forged in Shadow Torch. So check me out Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. Jake, what about you? Where do you stream? Where can people find you?
I stream at /JacobDeck on Twitch. I just play Super Smash Bros. On Mondays at 7 a.m. Will I make it to Elite Smash? Probably not, but I will get fucking heated as I try. So, you know, if you want to see me rage at 7 a.m. in the morning, that's the time to stop by.
Come for the meltdowns and stay for further meltdowns.
Yeah.
You can follow us here. If you're just tuning in, you can follow us here on Twitch on our channel. Go ahead and throw us a follow. You can also follow us on Twitter, where we are also at Lads on Tour Crew. Each of our, if you didn't catch it, each of our channels URLs are in the about section here on our Twitch channel, and you can follow us on Twitter individually as well, where we talk a lot about video games and all kinds of other stuff. So we'll see you guys January 16th for more Metal Gear Solid talk, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, couple weeks, and a happy new year to each and every one of you. I'm gonna put some tunes on. I'm gonna remind my cast here that we gotta be quiet because I still haven't figured out how to separate tunes into separate channels. So I'm gonna just crank these tunes up and wish y'all a goodbye, and we're gonna take you out on a little Metal Gear. So take care, y'all. Bye.
Bye.